What is the difference between a cast and a mashup? It's a decent question to ask while we're on the subject of casts. Generally, a mashup involves combining characters from different universes, while casts inherently come from somewhat similar origins. Think of Smash Brothers combining characters from multiple franchises, but also graphical styles, and how Disney Infinity merges not only Disney characters with other Disney characters, but 2D, 3D, live action, different genres, and so on. What's interesting is both of these properties average out and reimagine what may have initially been a live-action human and a 1920s animation cell, a 16-bit sprite, and a 3D model into a cohesive style. Casts are like sentences made from words in the same language, while mashups are like words that come from different languages entirely. The trick then to making your cast look cohesive, like they belong in the same world, is to create them from the same language, the same tone, aesthetics, principles, and decisions, while still contrasting them enough so that they are unique from each other. It becomes, especially in the later stages of the process, not too different than Squidward shoring up the left side of his snow fort, and then his right side, but then he accounts for the rear and from above. Tweaks and motions toward and away from similarity. We have 3 items on the agenda with our cast project. The first is to design our 4th and final character, Ashis. The second is to go back and fix Glangor, the abomination. That's not a subtitle, it's just an abomination of a design. And the third is to line up our characters, see if they go together, and make changes until they do. I can sum up the process of designing Ashis as:
started making it, had a breakdown, bon appetit.
If anything, the difficulty of designing the 4th character in a group of 4, combined with the multiple needs and do's and don'ts that I constrained myself to while making the character, and, full disclosure, the fact that Glangor was rushed and turned out rough, but Quilver ended up as something not only I was happy with, but being really well received by you, made me take the time, you'll notice that this video is a little late, and get something that I was really happy with. Ashis, as our 3rd opposite of Biko, looks down on him in a sort of sneering, judgmental way. And I really only started with one physical trait, which was tall. And in order to figure out what the character looked like, I also needed to finalize what these characters are doing in this world. And I won't tell you all of that, but suffice to say, Ashis is a storm conduit. He has the ability to absorb the energy from things like lightning. This made me go back and forth on how to portray him. Should he be somewhat stoic and mysterious, like the early concept? Should I stick with my hope to make him somewhat tribal and workaday, like the rest of the characters? Initially, my hope was to give him the silhouette of a cloud with a lightning bolt coming down from it, which eventually started me on the path of the snake tail for locomotion. In a completely backwards way, I arrived at the cobra or frilled lizard as a creature to pull from, along with some hints of the electric eel. Now, along with the braids on his head, Ashis' 2 main pieces of gear really broke open the character for me. Like Biko, Ashis wears symmetrical equipment that accentuates his natural ability. But instead of giving up a part of himself, Ashis is bearing the weight of the energy that he absorbs through the hood frills on the back of his head onto his shoulders. I also really liked the slit-eyed mystery face from the initial design, but had a bit of a eureka moment when I realized that in order to help him look at the storm, it would help to have a mask that is 1 part tribal, 1 part welder. And this makes the dropped mask in action pose with the dreads flying in the air look really cool, and his resting pose has the exact personality that I was hoping for. Now it's time to line everyone up, even though BIKO'S rendered and the rest are just sketches, and it's time to fix Glangor. There are pieces of a good character design in here, echoes of a forgotten good idea, but ultimately underbaked, with pieces that just don't make sense going together, proportioned in a kind of lopsided way. In remaking him, I focused on changing those proportions, adding some complexity to the arms, adding a glorious mouth, and tatting him up with some markings on his shell. Looking at all the characters together, and especially the 3 characters that are not Biko, there are quite a few similarities and contrasts between them. And one that's pretty intentional is use somewhere on each of the characters of a downward pointing triangle shape. On Glangor's back, on Quilver's clothing, and in Ashis' mouth and scales. And it's kind of blatant, but it signals in a way that these characters are a downward negative drain on Biko, while the lack of anything really sharp or pointy on Biko, in contrast, makes him more inviting and huggable. Now the next steps might involve fleshing each character out a little bit more, drawing them all together like this layout sketch that I started, but I feel like at this point I've definitely drawn them enough for this week. So I do have to restate, coming off of last week, normally any videos that I make where I've featured some of my own work, that work goes pretty ignored, I guess, and in the comments people are like 70 to 90% going, ooh, let me talk about me and my stuff, which is understandable, I suppose, but it does tend to feel like my work isn't really resonating when that happens. But with Quilver though, not only was I really happy with him, the comments were like 70 to 90% talking about Quilver, about the cast, and that you enjoyed the video, and that really lit a fire under me to finish strong with this series. So thank you, and you have not seen the last of these characters. Speaking of BIKO, new BIKO'S backpack for March. 5 items this time, including a Tommy sticker and a keychain. Get them on patreon.com/bageldenizen and keep the forge burning. I'm making new videos every week here on Character Design Forge. Subscribing lets you know when new videos are made available. Likes and comments really help the YouTube algorithm, which we're a pretty niche thing going here, so every little bit you can do helps. You can keep following me at BagelDenizen on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating.